Welcome to the conversation with Al McFarland. I'm your host, Al McFarland. So instead of presenting you a live program today, I'm sharing with you one of my favorite episodes, a show that shows you how we've molded the show that you've come to know and love. And while you're enjoying this show, I'm going to be working with my team to make the program even more informative, more insightful, and even more inspiring. And if you haven't already, I'd like you to show your support for the conversation with Al McFarland by subscribing to the Insight News YouTube channel. This way you'll get alerted about and never miss new episodes, show clips, and special features only available on the Insight News channel. And you can find us on YouTube at Insight News MN. To make it easier, I've got a link in the description on this video. Well, thank you again for all your support this year. I can't wait for you to see all that we are preparing for 2023. Now, my friend, sit back and enjoy this conversation with Al McFarland. I'm Al McFarland. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarland. Today is Monday, June 20th, 2022. A lot of people and organizations and government agencies are celebrating Juneteenth. There are Juneteenth activities that happened all last week and some Juneteenth related activities happening today and throughout the week. I think the beauty of it all is that we are bringing more into broad public vocabulary the capacity, the willingness, and the sensibility of discussing what the travesty of slavery, of enslavement was, what a powerful and indelible stain it was on humanity, and how our nation and our communities have either tried to ignore it or erase it, but not address it. And it seems to me that our capacity and interest in celebrating, marking, doing Juneteenth is a step in the right direction. You know, you can't change what you can't face. And Juneteenth allows us a platform, a recognized and branded platform for the examination of all of the atrocities, but through that, examining our resilience and the resilient potential of human beings. And so if you are celebrating Juneteenth this week or have and want to let us know what you've done, send me a note. My email is there, Al at Insight News, and or send a note on the chat or a note by Facebook or Twitter. And if I can capture that, I can bring you into the conversation. Mondays, I work with my friends and colleagues over at Hawthorne Neighborhood Council and other of the neighborhood associations in Twin Cities. We talk about the neighborhood, the community. We are blessed to have Diana Hawkins and Dee Phillips, who are leaders, elders in the Hawthorne Neighborhood Council, and they represent this energy that's afoot in the city of Minneapolis in a variety of neighborhoods where citizens through the NRP process engage and gather and deliberate. I call this governance at the neighborhood level. They think about what's good for their particular neighborhoods, their blocks, their business corridors. And we are fortunate to have this platform to be one of the places where those important neighborhood conversations can be expanded, shared, hopefully replicated, because the problems we face in North Minneapolis are those that our friends in Southeast are experiencing, our friends in South Minneapolis, and in fact, our friends in Kingston, Jamaica, and in Paris, France are facing as well. That's the beauty of the technology of the internet. It allows us to make connection around our similar human stories and human challenges and human successes and addressing those globally. So for that, I'm very grateful. Well, today I want to begin by introducing, well, first of all, hi, Diana. Hi, Dee. Hi, Brenda.
Hi, Al. How are you today?
Good. Thank you all. Thank you all.
I just want to say I'm blessed to be in everybody's presence today because it's very, very hot. And I want to say this to everybody out there. I'm one of them. So make sure you check on the elderly, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Please, and make sure you take care of yourself. Stay
Mhm.
hydrated. If you can, stay indoors, or if you're outdoors, be sensible, and be careful. Uh, Pleased to have former Judge, the Honorable Martha Holden Dimick, who was a Hennepin County judge and who is an attorney who's practiced a career. She's also, in her career, been, let me look at her page here, a nurse, I believe. She's a North Minneapolis resident and a person that has decided that she wants to run for Hennepin County Attorney. Well, should I call you Judge Holton Dimick,
No,
or
no, please
what's appropriate?
please call me Martha. That would be
Okay,
fine. Yes, please.
no, I will call you Martha or Sister Martha, one of
That's
those.
fine. That's fine.
Okay, and welcome. And I'm so glad that you have decided, first of all, to pursue the position being vacated by our present county attorney, um, Mike Freeman. Talk about that. What made you decide, and what that position means to you?
Okay, thank you, Al, and thank you for having me on your show. I feel very honored, and I'm glad to be able to speak to everyone about my concerns about what's going on and why I'm doing this. I retired from the bench, and I had almost 10 years in, and I retired because after George Floyd's murder in my community, and I've lived over North Minneapolis for probably about 20 years. And in my neighborhood, we've had, I think we might be up to 94 homicides, and that I find absolutely unacceptable. Several of those homicides, the victims were children, and one was a baby. And we have got to start paying attention to what's happening to our neighborhood. Now, as a judge, you really only can affect one family at a time if you're lucky enough to do that. I was one of, I think, 14 judges on the serious felony calendar. So we handled all of the serious felonies, and that would include, of course, murders, rapes, ag robberies, anything that involved weaponry and most likely a victim. So I've seen a lot in my career before me, but you're lucky enough if you can impact one family at a time. And I felt that I needed to do more. I wanted to, we need to fix the whole system. So my whole advantage point would be to rebuild trust and restore the effectiveness of the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. I think we've seen quite a few missteps taken and mistakes made by the current administration. And I know that people are very, very disappointed with the way certain cases have been handled. I know the office. I worked in the office for over 10 years. I'm the most qualified person for this position. After I left the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, I did go over to the City Attorney's Office. Susan Siegel did recruit me to be her criminal deputy. And there I managed over 60 prosecutors and support staff. Now, it was from that office that Governor Mark Dayton appointed me to the bench. But I have a story whenever you want to hear it, Al, before I moved to Minneapolis in the early 90s. That really talks about my nursing career and how I managed to transition into the legal career.
Well, I think now's a good time. I'm anxious to
I
hear the
knew he
story.
was going to
Please.
say that.
Okay. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was raised in the inner city of Milwaukee. I'm one of three. I'm the third of 9 children. And when I was ready to go to Marquette and study psychology, that was my biggest desire, was to go to Marquette first and then to study psychology. I got pregnant. And that really kind of turned my world upside down. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I can't go to school. This was in the olden days. They didn't have all the ways that you could attend school. Back there, it was traditional.
Right.
And so I'm trying to raise my daughter and I was working as a nursing assistant every other weekend. I couldn't make ends meet. So I did get on welfare, and we lived some pretty tough months until I decided to try to get into nursing school. Now, Milwaukee Area Technical College did have an associate's degree program. That's a 2-year program. It took me actually 3.5 years because, of course, I had to go part-time.
Sure.
My daughter, I had to get her in daycare, etc. I'd get up in the morning and I would get my daughter dressed. We take the bus. I take her over to the daycare center. I get back on the bus and I take the bus over to school. When I was done with that, I'd get back on the bus, go pick up my daughter, get on another bus and go home. I did this for about 3 years. And really, I don't know how I did it, but it was kind of an adventure. And I loved having my daughter with me. She was such a little tyke. She's very smart. But in any event, I did finish school. I got an associate's degree. And a couple of years later, I was able to get my BSN because the hospital that I worked for helped me. And I worked in nursing for over 12 years. And when my daughter was in high school, I wanted a different challenge. And I was doing home care nursing at that time. And I was doing home care in the inner city because a lot of the white nurses didn't feel comfortable going into the inner city. And it could get pretty dangerous. So I took on a lot of those cases. And I used that job to get myself through law school. And I finally did get to go to Marquette. After 3 years, I graduated. I didn't want to stay in Milwaukee because I thought Milwaukee was extremely segregated and racist. And it would have been very difficult for me to get a job there. I had a sister here. And so I interviewed with several law firms here. I got hired. I worked in private practice for about 8.5 years. Until Amy Klobuchar hired me in 1999. And she
Which law firms were you with here when you started?
The small one was Mako, Crownson Moore. It's now DeWitt. Mm-hmm. And then Gray Plant Moody, which is now Lathrop Gray Plant Moody. Mm-hmm. And then I met someone and I watched a trial, a triple murder trial over at the county. And I was just mesmerized. I said, I can do that. I can do opening statements. I can do cross-examination. So I did apply. And Amy Klobuchar hired me specifically to be the community prosecutor because I lived over north. And that was during the Murderapolis period. And during that period of time, I collaborated with the inspector over at the 4th Precinct. And that was Tim Dolan, who later became our police chief. Mm-hmm. I collaborated with him, my senior attorney, the Hawthorne Huddle, the neighborhood groups, the community organizations, the mosques, the church, anyone who wanted to get involved. And we had eyes on the street 365 days of the year. And as a result of all of this collaboration and all of the meetings and all of the interactions in our neighborhoods, and we were able to bring crime down to such a level that the police department and all of us together got a national award. And that award really emphasized the reduction in juvenile crime. And now look where we're at. Mm-hmm. I believe that with the same type of energy and the same type of collaboration, we can do that now. I talked about the 94 homicides in the past 2 years. Well, during the year of 2008 to 2010 in North Minneapolis, we had 23. And that's a big difference from where we're at right now. So I'm very, very committed to doing something about our public safety. I'm very committed about doing something about collaboration. We have to stop pointing fingers and we have to start doing the work. I want my prosecutors in the community. I want the community to know that we work for them and we will work with them. That is my mantra. I need to take a look at what our priorities are going to be because right now the caseloads are extremely high due to the backlog with the pandemic. When I left the bench, I had over 360 cases on my docket. So I know that the public defenders and the county attorneys have as many, if not more. So we have to, set up our priorities. We really have to address racial equity. Mm-hmm. The cases are charged based on the facts and the law, not because of a person's color, their religion, their sexual preference, whether they're male or female. We charge cases based on facts and the law. And right now, we have a problem in this community, and we want to make sure that we're protecting all of our communities in Hennepin County. Now, Al, I think everybody knows that this is a nonpartisan office. I came from a nonpartisan bench. Judges do not participate in and aren't endorsed by any political campaign. We decided that a long time ago. We didn't want politics entering our campaigns. And it's the same with this office. And some of the problems with the office, I think, is that the office has become too politicized. You got to make decisions based on what's right for the community, not whether or not you're going to get reelected or you've got some promises that you made to some elected official. We can't do that. I'm looking forward to doing the right thing. I'm not looking forward to worrying about whether or not I'm going to get reelected. That is not on my mind right now. On my mind is to get into that office and do the work that's going to benefit and help our communities.
Describe, if you would, the breadth and scope of the office. How many people? How big an organization? What's the budget? What's involved in running a county attorney? And then,
well, the budget is rather huge. I'm not real sure exactly. I think it's like 60 million. We've got about 160 attorneys. The major group of attorneys is in criminal. And we do have a civil side that handles child protection and represents all of the county agencies like the Hennepin County Medical Center. Right now, we do have a structure where it's the Hennepin County attorney, and he has two deputies, a civil deputy and a criminal deputy, same as what I was like over at the city attorney's office, but only on a smaller scale. Then there are managers for like criminal division, property, drugs, adult prosecution, child protection, and then the civil side. They have various offices over there. I think in all told, we're probably looking at about 450 with the support staff. We also work very closely with probation, with the county commissioners, with the county administrator, with psych services. We have justice partners, of course, with our various police departments in all of the cities. And so we've worked very closely with them. Our partnership, we are representing the victims on the criminal side. We are representing victims. We are absolutely concerned about the violent criminals, serious violent criminals and repeat offenders. They belong in prison. We do have various alternatives to incarceration through our treatment courts. And our treatment courts have to probably become more expansive. That would be drug court, veterans court, mental health court, chemical dependency issues. They're probably going to have to be more expansive and grow, which means we're going to need more money, more resources, more psychologists, counselors. And that's something that we're going to have to prepare for, because we really do know that there are many people out there that are not only victims of crimes, but also who commit crimes that are struggling with some underlying issues that have to be addressed. And that's what we have our specialty courts for. Now, we also have alternatives to incarceration for our low-level offenders. And sometimes that might include someone who commits their first felony, and that would be diversion or restorative justice. And we have referred defendants to these specialty courts, if of course they have to qualify, meet certain criteria. But we really do know that low-level offenders and people that are struggling with mental health issues, PTSD, and chemical dependency, they need extra help, and we know that. But we have to distinguish that from our very violent criminals. I've dealt with people that are they're very dangerous. They don't need to be on the streets. And both as a prosecutor and as a judge. And we have to be aware that there are people that just don't belong on the streets. And we can't make blanket statements that we're putting everybody in prison, because that is not the case. Minnesota is the fourth lowest state in terms of incarcerations. And so we need to pay attention to the fact that we are very open and very, I would say, understanding about people that are struggling in their communities with other issues. And one of our biggest problems right now, Al, is our juveniles. And we've seen articles in the paper recently where mothers are asking for our help because they can't control their children. Their children are out of hand. We've seen the increase with the carjacking issue. I had a neighbor right down the block from me who was carjacked. And we also have the issue of the fact that the county homeschool was closed along with Totem House in St. Paul without anybody having a plan. And that we have to have a place for these children to get a timeout. Okay, if you want to call it a timeout, fine. But we have to give our communities and some of these parents a break. And we have to be able to handle these kids once we do have them under our jurisdiction. So that means we have to have the resources and we have to be able to attack the underlying problems. And a lot of those problems stem from trauma in the home, trauma in school. We need to reach out to the parents. We need to, there's so much we need. And I just envision reentry programs, the community welcoming the families back and having some programs set up for the kids. I mean,
let me stop you for a second.
Yes.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking, boy, this is an easy interview because you got so much to say and you're saying it so clearly and so powerfully that it's easy just to listen to you. So thank you for that. But let me interject and redirect a little bit, because one of the thoughts I have is understanding the relationship between the prosecutor and the public defender. Would you describe that and how those roles interplay? I'm fixated by the single-mindedness that you are presenting about being clear that there is a need to protect the community from people either because of problem A or problem B, but who present a threat to the community. And too often, I think, in the community, we try to explain away the problems that bring people to a place of their being dangerous to each other. And we don't look at that, but you seem to be being very clear when you say some people need to be in jail where they can't hurt other people. And it's kind of refreshing to have that clarity come from you with the experience you have as a prosecutor, as a judge, and now as a candidate to be the chief prosecutor from the county. So talk about how that single-mindedness seems to emerge in you, in your profession, but also talk about the difference between that and the role of the defender, county defense attorney, and how those things both work together for the good of society and community.
Absolutely. We absolutely have to have judges, and we have to have prosecutors, and we have to have defense attorneys, because the system's not going to work without it. And the way we get along, we have to think about the pragmatic services that we are offering from our different perspectives. The public defenders and every person is entitled, and we protect that right to the fullest. Every person is entitled to have representation during a court appearance, especially in criminal cases. They're very complex cases, and a lot of times people are looking to have their freedom curtailed in some way, shape, or form. That is protected. We as judges, we make sure that a person is represented. If a person can't afford an attorney, of course, we all know that they can be appointed a public defender. And the public defender's office, I've worked for, it's got to be about 25 years. If you talk about my experience as a prosecutor, a city criminal deputy, and as a judge, I've worked with defense attorneys my whole entire career. And that public defender's office, they've got a tough job, primarily because I don't think they suffer more from a lack of attorneys, from having huge caseloads, more so than I think the prosecution office does. I think the prosecution office is pretty well staffed, but I know that the public defender's office struggles with staffing. Now, we are on the opposite side of what we're doing. I mean, we're there to prosecute cases. They're there to defend cases. And sometimes these two aren't going to meet in a positive manner, because I have one thing in mind in terms of, say, if I'm the prosecutor, in terms of the case that I am prosecuting, and the defense attorney, of course, has another angle in terms of how they're going to defend their client. You have to have a certain amount of understanding of the law and a certain amount of understanding of everybody's personality. We don't always get along. Being a judge and being a prosecutor and being a public defender, they're very difficult jobs because of what we're responsible for doing. But we have to keep our eye on the ball. And I know that you sometimes wonder, well, am I doing the right thing by insisting that this person receive this type of sentence? Or should I be taking into consideration as a prosecutor some of the difficulties that this person has had in their lives? We also have to take into consideration their prior criminal history. There are so many different factors that we all need to take into consideration. But the primary thing we're looking for as a prosecutor is public safety. And I would think, I've never been a public defender, but I would think that the primary issues that they're looking for is that we're doing things and following the Constitution and the rights that the defendants have. So I know that that's very, very important. So
It's not then that prosecutors are running roughshod over the Constitution or over the constitutional rights of the defendants. It's that they are being sticklers for the law itself, the rules, right? And they are protecting the validity, the sanctity, the agreement of the rules that have been maybe violated one way or the other. And so, in a sense, prosecutors are dispassionately advocating for the value and the maintenance of the order of the rules. Am I saying that properly? Am I looking at it, framing it the right way?
You've said it very well. And what sometimes where we have the most issues is in the stops, how the police handle the investigation of a case.
Mm-hmm.
There are nuances there that I think we have to be more aware of that could possibly complicate a case more. But yes, we are there to enforce the law. We are there. If someone breaks the law, we have to review the facts, make sure the facts are there, and also review the law to make sure that the appropriate law is being applied before charges are brought. Now,
so the question of confidence in the public and among the public comes in part out of where there is discretion up and down the system, where judges have discretion, where jailers have discretion, where charging officers have discretion, where police officers, probation officers, people in positions of authority and power, legal standing, have discretion. And as often as not, the complaint you hear in the community is that what I get stopped for as a child, as a 15-year-old, driving my dad's car without a license, and what my neighbor Jamie gets stopped for the same thing. The officer takes Jamie home and tells Jamie's dad, I get hauled into the county. And so there's that sense in the community. It might be more myth than truth, or it may be truer than we think, that there's discrimination in the discretion, and that discrimination works against and has a bias against our people because we're Black. And so I'm sort of bubbling up from the neighborhood just to have you respond to stuff I know you hear all the time, and I'm sure you at some level feel, and also feel that there's a possible way to address that is consistent with the high value of the law.
And see, I want more transparency. And yes, it is a problem. I'm not going to say it's not a problem. It is a problem. Prosecutors and judges and defense counsel, we all come from such varied backgrounds. We come from various thinking patterns, our values, however you want to say it. And what we need to do is we need to be more transparent. I have always tried in my efforts to just from charging, I always try to sit down with the police officer and go through his investigation and review his reports. And if I have a problem, I talk to the police officer, and that's before you even decline a case. That's common courtesy. Not all of us did that. And so there were a lot of problems with whether or not the police thought we were being aggressive enough in charging their cases, because nobody would explain to them why they were declining or why they were deferring. I tried to do that, and I'm going to make sure that the prosecutors in that office do that. If you're going to decline a case, you don't write a simple little letter or a memo or whatever. It really, if you have time, you got to talk to the police officers. I always found time. Of course, my caseload wasn't as bad as it is today.
What does decline the case mean? What does that mean?
Okay, that means that you're not going to charge it.
Okay.
Okay.
So the officers
they get pretty upset when you don't charge their cases. But if you take the time to explain to them why you're not charging their cases, and it may be as simple as the evidence isn't there, or there may be some issues with the stop, or with the traffic stop, or with the arrest. And rather than wait until you go to an evidentiary hearing to sort that out and to have a judge make the decision, I think there might be a way that we as prosecutors can stop the case from even getting that far by declining it because there are some issues.
Okay.
Now, I did a real chicken thing a long time ago, and I feel really bad about it. It was probably about, it had to be about 17, 18 years ago. I had a case that an officer brought to me for a 4th-degree assault, and he had a scratch on his arm, and you have to show demonstrable injury. So you got to be able to show that there was an injury. Okay. And then for some reason, Al, I decided to look at the booking photos for the young man that was arrested. And when I looked at those booking photos, they beat the living daylights out of that boy. And it just shocked me. And in my head, I thought he's already been punished. It wasn't the right thing to do. But rather than report that case, because I knew back in that day it wasn't going to go very far, most likely, I called the officer in my office at the time as a prosecutor, and I said, I can't charge your case because by the time we get to court, your arm is going to heal, and I'm not going to be able to prove it because it was barely a visible scratch. Rather than, you know what I'm saying? But as a judge, let's fast forward to like a couple years ago when I had an officer in my courtroom testifying as to how he managed to make this arrest of this young man. on a motor ped or it's some kind of cycle. He didn't have a license. And the officer testified to how gently he handled the guy and how he helped him with his cycle, put it against a pole or whatever. And you would look at the cam, and if here comes the camcorder video, the body cam video, excuse me. And I was shocked at the way they treated this young man. Threw him up against the car. This was over north, probably on Penn Avenue. Called for backup. It's this little bitty kid. They call for backup, and they're like, I mean, the kid's terrorized on the ground by this point, you know. He did have a weapon in his fanny pack, but instead of trying to de-escalate, because you could tell clearly the kid was scared. Instead of trying to de-escalate the issue, they escalated it. And the guy turned around and said to the kid, "What are you trying to be?" This is a police officer saying to this kid, "What are you trying to be?" Another statistic. And that just floored me. What do you mean, another young black man that shot? I mean, I looked at this officer in my courtroom and I'm like, are you kidding? I said, this doesn't match. I didn't suppress the gun because I thought there was enough resistance there to deny the defense request to suppress the gun because the case would have gone away. Okay. They appealed my decision and the Court of Appeals correctly dismissed and did not affirm my decision and dismissed the case. See, that's why we have the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. There are correcting courts. And, you know, I got a clear message, you know, through their ruling, you know, what to do in the event of the next case that happens like this. Now, what I did do is I sent the CD over to Arredondo at the time, and I ran into him and I said, I've got this CD I'm sending over to you, and I want you to look at it.
CD of what?
The CD of the camcorder video. I said, this is something that you probably should show in your training classes of what not to do. And this was close to the time, I don't know, the timing in terms of what was going on in Minneapolis at the time. I never got any follow through, but that's what I did. And that's the kind of thing that we have to have our finger on that type of pulse when it happens. And we have to let the administration and the police department not only know, but we have to follow up and ask and find out what was done about it. You know, I think that's our responsibility too, as prosecutors, and certainly as the lead prosecutor. I want to know why was this young man treated this way, and what are you all teaching and training your officers to do so that this never happens again? Because it happens a lot. I've seen it. It happens a lot in my community.
One of the demographics of the staff of the department broadly is representative of the ethnic composition of the county or of the city of Minneapolis, number one. And then what is the demographic profile of offenders, people that are charged? To the best of your,
Okay. I know as judges, and people need to know this, we kept track of that. In fact, we had an office, an IT office that had as our head a PhD woman who kept track of all of those statistics. And I wish I had a copy of that in front of me, but I don't think it's as unequal as people think it is in terms of who's being arrested.
That's my question. What's your sense?
My sense is that it's very close. I think the demographics with regards to whites being charged, as African Americans being charged, Native Americans being charged, Hispanics, and any other class is pretty close. It's not that far apart. Okay. It really isn't. And the judges, and I know that, I don't know if the county attorney's office is keeping stats in terms of who they charge, who they decline. I want to make sure that that is done. So, because we need that information, we do need that data. And I know the judges keep very close track of that data. The problem is they don't have a PR person. And I was talking to a couple of my colleagues not too long ago. I said, you all have to be more transparent. You got to find a way to get this information out so people know exactly, what's going on, and that the judges are very cognizant of how people are treated while they're in front of them. It's just that important. Transparency is huge, and we've had such a lack of transparency all the way around, Al. We really have, and that's got to stop. Once okay, let's talk about one of the things that people want to talk about, I think, and that's police shootings. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have a police shooting. Let's take for example, Amir Locke. Okay, we have the shooting. Everybody knows what happened with Amir Locke. Okay, the first thing that's done is someone comes out in the police department and says it's a righteous shoot. Here is the body cam video, and it's one video that shows Mr. Locke pointing the gun to the ground. Now, I know that they're saying that at some point he pointed the gun at the officer. Nobody saw that. The only one they saw was the video where he's pointing the gun at the ground, and then the head of the police department at the time says it was a righteous shoot. Nobody should have said one damn word about that case until they had everything. I mean, there were other body cam videos they could have looked at. Mm-hmm. I know that there was an intense investigation. I know that the AG's office was called in. I also know that the county attorney's office worked on this, the BCA. Everybody had reports, investigations. Let it play out before we say anything. We can't let people bully us into putting out information because we're nervous about the perception everybody has. We have to wait until we have every bit of information. And I believe that after the fact, the county attorney's office and the AG's office put out a 42-page joint report that explained their decision. Okay, that's when it should have come out. Nobody should have said anything until that report came out. And I just think that we got to be so careful before we are transparent. You could just say, at this stage, we're looking at the BCA report, and this is what it entails. Okay, mm-hmm. And that may be a day later. Okay, now we have, or a couple days later, because it takes a while. I have this report in front of me, and this is what this says, but we're not ready to make a decision. That's how it should be handled. We got to be so careful with the information that we are going to put out there, but we have to be transparent at every step with whatever we can offer the public at that time. Transparency is very important now.
Are you in contact with, or have you been in contact with, either on the bench or now as a candidate for county attorney, with prosecutors in other counties around the country? In particular, I'm interested, does it make a difference when there is a Black prosecutor in the community? And I often wonder what the experience is of both law enforcement and defense systems and public safety in places like Washington, D.C. I wonder what Eric Adams is going to mean for the city of New York, an ex-police officer, now the chief executive, the mayor of the town. And the wondering I have, Martha, is because always in my mind is a critique of the excesses of white privilege, white power, white supremacist thought and action that sort of, I believe that I and we as Black people live with every day, period. I could be wrong, but that's how I see the world at the moment. And so if that's how I see it, I wonder, is there a place where justice itself and by itself alone is the standard and the rule, where justice does not accept deviance from principles of balance, fairness, where justice is both taught and understood and embraced. And so the question is, does having an Eric Adams as the mayor or someone like you as the prosecutor in the community, obviously committed to the principle of the application of the law, of preserving and supporting and enacting the mission, purpose of law. What difference does it make when our people are in those positions of power, if at all? That's my question.
Oh my God, that is such a loaded question, Al, because it really depends on who the person is. In some cases, no, it doesn't help to have a person of color in those positions. And I don't know where the disconnect is. For me and myself, I mean, I was raised in an inner city, and which is now a minority city. I grew up and went to an all-white school that after we moved in the neighborhood, within a year or two, turned into an all-black school because of white flight. And then I also grew up in a city where there was very obvious redlining. When I was raising my daughter and tried to move on the south side of Milwaukee, if you went on the south side of Milwaukee as a black person, you were risking your life back in the day, okay? We also had a very racist police chief. Police officers frequently, when they were transporting someone, when we called it the paddy wagon, they ended up at the jail dead, okay? I mean, that was what, I mean, I was raised about in that type of an environment. I was very much kind of like, gosh, I was just so disgusted in the civil rights period. I just thought, what are we doing? Why can't we get peace? Why can't we be treated better? I mean, I'm talking the 60s and the 70s. I'm probably dating myself, but still, I don't care. It's so important, because while I was on the bench for 10 years, I felt like my hands were tied behind my back because I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get involved in any political issues, any social issues. Heaven forbid, we got all these rules that we have to follow to maintain an appearance of fairness and impropriety. And I'm telling you that I felt so handicapped. Here I am in the middle in North Minneapolis. And I'm thinking, what am I doing? How am I contributing? I'm getting old. I've got to make a difference. I've got to get out here and actually reach people. I think I can make a difference, but I can't do it by myself. And I'm not even going to try to imagine that I can do it by myself. I need everybody in the community to help me. And I need the police department to get their act together and start hiring some decent folks. I need the police department probably to I'm not going to say what they need to do with their administration, but you're going to have some outside folks come in and train these people, because the culture is broken. We know the culture is broken. I want to say these things, but I don't want to say these things like I'm telling them they're terrible, awful people. I'm trying to say these things so that we can find an answer and start working together on building a very strong North Side. We have been neglected. I'm tired of the North Side being neglected. And I'm tired of people saying, well, we do, they are a danger. They've always been a danger. No. We can change this, but everybody's got to weigh in, just the way they weighed in back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I need the help. I'm not going to be able to do it by myself, but I'm going to do something.
I was listening to you describing your starting off in Milwaukee and becoming a young mom, and I'm imagining you as you're speaking, Martha Holden Dimick, as a kind of fierce young sister with an attitude.
Yes, I had
attitude.
Big time attitude. It got me in trouble. Got me in trouble a couple times.
Attitude reflecting determination and unstoppability. And so I did pull up your website. If you don't mind me sharing this, I just showed you in your cap and gown a second ago. But when I saw this of you, that must be your daughter,
Yes.
is who I imagined you to be. So I don't know. And you mentioned her earlier, but I see fierceness in you in this relationship with your child. Am I seeing the right thing?
Yes, you are. Yes. And that's my little daughter, Jocelyn, Jazzy, as we call her now.
Well, what a great photograph. And I think that
Thank you.
just talks about, I think, the powerful and beautiful role that women play in their children's lives and in community, and Black women in particular, play that brings confidence, protection, empowerment, and sensibility, a sense of possibility in the lives of children. And so I thank you for that as well. So this has been a wonderful interview. I hope it's just the beginning. What do you see
Yes.
as the roadblocks to your success in achieving your goal of being elected to county attorney in Hennepin County?
Well, I think basically money and getting my name out to everyone in Hennepin County. I've been going out into the suburbs. I know that they have different issues.
Mhm.
I have a symposium this evening at Shiloh. We're trying to gather groups of people to talk about what can we do to make sure we don't have a totally bloody summer, and what can we do to stop the violence. And so we're going to be discussing that tonight at 5 o'clock. I also, I've talked to the congregants. I'm in I celebrated Juneteenth yesterday by going to as many Friday and Saturday, as many Juneteenth events that I could go to and talking to people. And I've been meeting some very interesting people who have had some issues with the county attorney's office, and have had some issues with convictions. And I want to hear people's stories, because those are the stories that I can take back with me to the county attorney's office, and with me during forums that I participate with the other candidates. And I will tell you that I believe by far I am the most experienced person for this position. You're not going to hire a carpenter to do a plumber's job. You have to have experience. I need to be able to hit the ground running, and I can. I still know people in that office. I know what needs to be done in that office. And I've already been talking to some of the county attorneys in the office to find out what's going on with the carjackings, what's going on with expungements, how are we handling bail. I can do that because I still have colleagues there that are willing to talk to me. And so that is so important. We need someone who knows that office. And I'm the only person who has ever managed an office of prosecutors, and that is key. And I have relationships established throughout the whole entire criminal justice system that absolutely helps me with this.
How many judges have become county prosecutors in Hennepin?
No one.
Oh, so you'd be the first.
I would be the first that would retire from being a judge. And several people have asked me, well, isn't that a step down? I said, into my community, it's a step up, because that's what we need. I need to be involved. I need to have my hands untied, and I want to be there. I want to make a huge difference. I couldn't do it. On the bench. I love my job. I miss my colleagues, but I can do more for my community and for Hennepin County not being a judge. That's my mantra.
Mm-hmm. I think, and Diana, you can comment on this, or Brenda or Dee, that one of the questions I had earlier, the implications of the question was the question about fairness and balance, and a sense that the system has been structurally unfair to us. Having said that, there's also the side that says that when you come out of us and take the reins of the system, you also have a unique ability to not be gamed by us, because we know that part of our experience with the system is how to figure out how to get around it, get past it, even in a difficult situation. And so that works into a kind of theater that is not productive, that is, I don't know if I'm going in the right direction in this question, but it's like when you go to a school and your aunt or your mom or your dad is a principal or a teacher, you got to be on better behavior because of that. And so I'm trying to equate the possibility of Martha Holden Dimick as the county prosecutor uh, as a reason that people have to be on better behavior because she's serious and she'll make stuff happen. Does that make sense to you, Martha?
Yes, it does. It makes a lot of sense.
How do
to
we
me.
not excuse ourselves? How do we
Right.
understand, create a situation where we know that we can't make excuses to ourselves for our failures?
No, we cannot. We got to stop this. We have to assume responsibility for what's going on in our communities. We do. And we know who's doing it.
Okay.
We know who's doing it. So we have to accept responsibility and not be afraid to say that.
Diana, Brenda, Dee, we're at the end of the hour, but any questions, comments, feelings?
I just want to say, my good friend Martha, I'm glad to see that you're running. I'm glad to see you out and about again. Martha and I go way back to my cable days with Amy Klobuchar.
That was a while ago.
I just wanted to say, Martha, you reminded me of the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, when he said he had to leave Congress. He just felt that it was time for the move because he could do more as an Attorney General and working where the needs were. And I thought about that. So
Thank you.
congratulations and kudos to you. It's a giant move, but
I know.
I'm just totally impressed with your interview and your passion. So I wish you the very best.
Thank you so much.
Any comments, Dee?
Well, I'm so impressed by your willingness to stand by your oath and your conscience and what you define as right. When we see that not happening on the larger scale in Washington, it's just so refreshing that there is someone here still that believes that when you take an oath, you live by that oath. There are rules that you live by, and hopefully we can somehow push that up the pipeline so that the people that are on the national level can learn that lesson too.
And don't forget me if I get in that office. I mean, if you need to check me, check me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But don't forget about me just because, I'm there. I'm serious. I need everybody's help. And I need to know when I need to be more grounded. And I'm relying on that from others.
We're going to be using these Monday sessions now through November to keep the political ballot questions in front of our community. Our job, I believe, is to create discourse awareness and facilitate the understanding of the workings of governance in our community. So with that, I'm going to be inviting you back again and again, and I offer an open invitation to show up anytime because we're doing this every Monday, and you can just pop on. If I see you there, it means you got something to say, and we'll make sure that you get a chance to say it. With that, thank you so much. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.